There's a war you never heard about. Not a single shot was fired, no tanks rolled, no flags were raised, and yet it was the most dangerous war of them all. This is the story of how millions of ordinary men and women, mothers, fathers, shopkeepers, teachers, fought back against the most powerful propaganda machine in history. Not with guns, but with courage, with radios, and with a single forbidden truth. Imagine living in a world where every newspaper lied, where every radio broadcast was controlled, where your children were taught to hate in school, and where speaking the truth could get you taken from your home in the middle of the night. This was the reality across Nazi-occupied Europe. From the streets of Paris to the villages of Belgium, the German war wasn't just fought with armies. It was fought with silence, with deception, and with the manipulation of everything people saw, heard, and believed. But in the shadows, a quiet resistance grew. Not with bombs, but with radios turned to BBC London. Not with soldiers, but with underground newspapers printed in basements. And not with speeches, but with whispered words passed from neighbor to neighbor. In this war, the most dangerous weapon wasn't a rifle or a tank. It was a signal, a frequency, a voice from the other side of the English Channel saying, "We are still here." And for millions, that voice was hope. This is the untold story of propaganda, censorship, and the silent battlefield of World War II, where the fight for truth was as real as any front line. And if you think this was just history, think again, because the same war is still being fought today. In June 1940, when German tanks rolled into Paris, the world watched the fall of a capital. But what followed was something far more insidious. The press was silenced. Newspapers like Le Temps were shut down, replaced by collaborators who printed only what the Nazis wanted seen. In Belgium, the once proud Le Soir became known as Le Soir Volé, the stolen newspaper, publishing propaganda while the real journalists went underground. Radios were registered, confiscated, or monitored. Listening to the BBC was a crime, punishable by imprisonment, even death. Yet every night, thousands turned their dials in secret, searching for a signal from London, a voice from home, a whisper of hope. In the darkness, Radio Londres came alive, a calm, steady voice speaking in French. Les Français parlent au Français. The French speak to the French, and in coded phrases, it delivered messages to the resistance. Les sanglots longs des violons de l'automne, a line from a poem, harmless to the censor, but a signal to fighters. Action was coming. The Nazis' new information was power. Joseph Goebbels, their minister of propaganda, built a machine of deception. Newsreels like Deutsche Wochenschau were broadcast across occupied Europe, edited daily, translated into multiple languages, showing German soldiers as disciplined, courteous, even noble. They were the protectors of order, the shield against chaos. Meanwhile, the real war, the killing, the raids, the deportations, was erased. In the Channel Islands, the only British soil occupied by Germany, people were fed propaganda that portrayed the Germans as polite guests. But behind the headlines, they lived in hunger. Tulip bulbs, seaweed, and even cats became food. The arrival of the SS Vega in 1944, carrying Red Cross parcels, didn't just bring food, it brought proof that the world hadn't forgotten them. In Eastern Europe, the lie was even more monstrous. In 1944, the Nazis allowed the Red Cross to visit Theresienstadt, a camp in Czechoslovakia they called a spa town for Jews. They painted buildings, planted gardens, forced prisoners to perform in orchestras, and staged children's plays. The goal? A propaganda film to prove that Jews were treated humanely. The film was never completed, but the deception worked. When the world saw it, they believed the lie. And when the cameras stopped rolling, most of those who performed were sent to Auschwitz. The Nazis didn't just lie to the occupied, they lied to their own people. Children's books like Der Giftpilz taught that Jews were dangerous, like poisonous mushrooms. One page asked, "What is the similarity between a Jew and a spider?" The answer? Both are disgusting. Schools taught that democracy was weak, that Bolshevism was a Jewish plot, that war was necessary for survival. But in occupied France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, another story was being written, in secret. Underground newspapers, printed on hidden presses, passed from hand to hand. In the Netherlands, Het Parool, the slogan, circulated tens of thousands of copies, detailing Allied advances, exposing Nazi crimes, and reminding people they were not alone. In France, women ran printing presses, delivered papers on bicycles, and smuggled messages in bread. They were not soldiers, but they were soldiers of truth. And when liberation came, it wasn't just with Allied tanks. It came with the sound of radios turned up loud, broadcasting free again. This story matters, not just because it happened, but because it reminds us how easily truth can be buried. In an age of deep fakes, algorithmic manipulation, and state-controlled media, the lessons of Nazi propaganda are not history. They are warning. The war for the human soul was fought not in the skies, but in the silence between broadcasts, in the trust between neighbors, in the decision to believe in a truth no one else would speak. And in that war, the most heroic act was simply to listen. For the older American viewers, those who remember the clarity of right and wrong during World War II, and this is a reminder. Freedom is not just defended on battlefields, but in the way we speak, the way we listen, and the way we choose truth over silence. The war may be over, but the fight for truth continues.